And now I hope that you're ready for the red planet, because already during the coffee break, I heard, some chat about that. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be absolutely different. I would say it's gonna be absolutely off shoes. It's gonna be absolutely outstanding. Because now we will hear about lessons from simulated Mars, sustainability and team dynamics. And for that, I would like to invite our very special guest today here at the Bridge Conference 2022, Inga Popovaite. She has a PhD in sociology from the University of Iowa. She studies small group dynamics in places that resemble long-term space flight conditions, space analogs. Dr. Popovaite conducted her dissertation research at the Mars Desert Research Station, a space analog facility in Utah, United States of America. In her work, Inga uses mixed methodology and explores gender, emotions, and status in groups that live and work together for a period of time. Currently, Dr. Popovaite is a researcher at Kaunas University of Technology and a recipient of Marius Jakulis Jason Foundation scholarship. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give our thunderous applause to Dr. Inga Popovaite.
Okay. So, hi everyone. Who is this person? I would like to hear her because that's not me. Oh, no, joking, it's totally me. So, I really hope that I will be able to live up to all of your expectations here today. Because I haven't heard a lot of presentations today, but from what I heard, you all know a lot of things, way more than I do about project management. And I guess I wrote my dissertation, but that's about it. So what I'm going to talk to you today about will be a bit about my life on Mars, so to speak. Those 2 weeks that I've spent in Utah desert simulating Mars with a crew. What I want you to take away from this presentation is, I don't know, maybe something to talk to your friends about, maybe just, maybe you'll want to go there yourself. And maybe some lessons that would help you here in daily lives when you manage your own teams, your own projects here on, well, planet Earth and Lithuania and other countries. Cool. So let's begin. And so before I start, let's kind of set the scene here. People are preparing to go to Mars. If you read the news, there's everything about these big, nice rockets, and I'll leave it to Freud to analyze that, what it actually means. But in order to go to Mars, sometime in the future, technology is not enough. Because we can have biggest rockets there are, we can have all the fuel, we can have everything. Apparently, we already learning how to make oxygen on Mars, which is really exciting. But there's always one variable that it's a bit harder to deal with, and that's a human being. People are very unpredictable. We have moods, we have mood swings, we have our needs and wants and emotions and everything. We're like just this bubble of unpredictability. And when we put a lot of people together in one tiny place, a lot of bad things can happen. Just kind of think back 2 years ago when you were locked down with your loved ones, with your roommates, in like tiny 1-2 bedroom apartments. Let's say someone Baldupiai, Fabioniškės or something, for those who are from Vilnius. And you just can't leave, you can't do anything, and you love the people, but there is extra stress happening. You love them, but it's like just too much. So imagine that on Mars. So you can't really walk away anywhere, right? Or in space, In space, no one can hear you scream, but you also cannot slam the door. So that's a problem. And this is what me and like a lot of other psychologists around the world, I'm a sociologist though, this is what we study. So my basically my area, what I look at is, so how do we as people, how will we one day live and work on Mars or on Moon, which is a bit more closer now? So how do you do that on Earth? That's a kind of one big problem, right? Because you kind of want to study future in another planet, and you are here and now. So one of the ways to do that are to conduct studies in so-called space analogs. So what are space analogs? So these are places on Earth that somewhat resemble parts of space experience. So they can be natural. Think about Antarctic or Arctic research stations where folks live for a while in the dark and the cold. They do their own work, they do research, they have like supply drops there and there. They have polar bears if it's like up north, and just a bunch of penguins if it's down south, and not much else. So, and there are other places that, like the one that you see here, that these were built to study people, built to study folks, study people, study groups, kind of in preparation for launching to Mars one day. And this is the place that I went to conduct my doctoral research when I was a student in Iowa. It's called Mars Desert Research Station, and it's kind of privately owned research base that's been operational since 2001. And people go there every year. The field season lasts from about end of September to end of June, because you don't want to stay in the desert over summer, because you can see it's a tin can, and you don't want to be in a tin can when it's like 45 degrees outside. So field season lasts about like 10 months or so, and throughout that time, groups of about 6 people, we were only 4 though, about 6 people come and stay up 2 weeks or longer to simulate life on Mars. So there are like different buildings there. There's like the main hab that we standing in front of there. This is where we live, and there's like, you see on the picture there, it's like a whole campus. So there's connected buildings. There's like a laboratory. There's a greenhouse. There are a couple of observatories and other places to work at. Cool. So this is the campus that I've been to. And this is one of the places on Earth that you can study what would happen in the future. All right, so how does life look there? So first of all, when you go there, you really take up the role of the Martian, meaning that you just don't wander out without your spacesuit. You don't just do whatever you want to do. You always have to have the lock closed so you don't lose oxygen, and before you go outside you decompress, because Mars atmosphere and Earth atmosphere are different pressures. So there's like a lot of tiny rules that you follow. There's a book you read before you have to take an exam or so on the first day. And when we go outside, we do that with strict rules we have to apply ahead of time to mission control with a specific detailed plan, where are we going, what we're doing. We wear these weird-looking spacesuits that weigh about like 10 to 15 kilos or something like that. And I can tell you that to drive a rover, or it's like a golf cart-ish thing, with that bubble on your head, it's very uncomfortable. But it's also, again, that's part of the idea, to make human very uncomfortable here, so we know how to behave, how to move, how to drive, how to, pick something when you don't see your feet. So once the first astronauts step on Mars, they don't have to think about these things, because everything has been documented, like hundreds of volunteers have done it already. But this is the fun part, is when you get to go outside. But as I said, you have to plan ahead, you have to get mission control approval, and most of the time, you stay inside. And inside, it's very cramped. It's 2-story building, very limited resources. You have limited water, means you don't take daily showers. I took shower twice, both times about 1.5 minutes, so it's very short showers. But also, again, you don't sweat that much because it's desert, it's dry, but there's dust everywhere. It gets there, so you have to think about how to use your limited water to clean, to do dishes and stuff like that. All the food you get is also very rationed. Every crew gets the same kind of pile of rations that consist of different varieties of dried vegetables, dried meat, dried eggs. Anyone ever had an omelet from egg powder? I have. Nothing to write home about. So you have very limited supplies of food and water. I mean, limited in a way that you just can't run to a store and just get whatever you want. So you have to work with what you have. And internet is also a limited supply. So you cannot just, chat with your loved ones on Facebook or Messenger, or you can't just Zoom home whenever you feel like, because when we were there, we had less than a gigabyte per day for all of us, and we had to every day submit gazillion reports to mission control. And if you use all your internet before that time, well, you failed, and essentially you died, because if you can't communicate with mission control, you can't survive on Mars, right? So again, inside very limited resources, and you have to do with what you have, because you can't just order anything from outside. So this is now I will start going for maybe lessons that I've learned. So lesson number 1 is just use what you have and be creative. So it can apply to living on Mars in the future, or for you in your teams when you have a project to manage. For example, with our dried food rations, we made pizzas, we made chilies. We had this tiny, small garden that we had to tend to. And so there was some fresh vegetables, so fresh herbs there as well. And another thing, when you use what you have and you're being creative, also remember that energy is another resource. And why am I saying that? So we had a green hub. You can see some pictures of plants growing up there. So green hub, like a greenhouse. And the administrator, Dr. Rupert, told us one thing. Rule number 1, eat what you grow. Because a lot of time people are just tend for plants. Oh, what a cute little tomato. Oh, it's just one tomato. I'm not going to pick it up. I'm not going to eat it. Or it's just tiny bit of herbs. I just let them grow. She's like, no. On Mars, when you use energy to make something, you cannot just let that energy be wasted. You have to use what you make. So that's maybe another lesson. Just don't waste energy on things that you're not going to use, and use what you have. Once again, and be creative with what you have, because you can make pizzas or chilies or anything, even if you have just dried ingredients. Another thing, with limited resources, you have to rethink your relationship with your team. Who are you and who are your teammates? As I said, internet was limited and water was limited, so as a person, I could just go use it up and, I'll be fine. No one is going to, stab me or something. We all people, right? Well, civilized. However, I would feel so bad because everyone would blame me, and even if they wouldn't say anything, because I used limited resources by myself, because I was thinking about my needs and not my team needs. And that's kind of another lesson that I've learned that I think it's useful for everyday life and in management teams, is that you are just one person in a team, and you have to think about the others. Think what the team wants, not what you want, but think what the team wants, because you will only survive or only be successful if the team is successful. In addition to that, we had very clear roles in the team, so we all were responsible for specific tasks, so our roles didn't really overlap, and we knew where to go with questions. So there was not single person that manages everything, because when you have one single vertical leader, if something happens to that leader, you lost. And when power is distributed throughout teams with specific roles and specific tasks, then you have more decision-making power. And another thing that when I was preparing this presentation, I was thinking about that. It's not only that resources are limited, but also your time and space is also limited. So it can be quite literally, because you have, like there we had 2 weeks to do a lot of things, and then you have to prioritize what you actually want to achieve. Because time is not limitless, it's very limited. And also the same thing with space. There in this place particularly, limited amount of space contributed to additional stress and additional friction between team members. And especially it happens, I'll digress a bit, but let's say in the real space travel, or when you actually stay in a long periods of time, longer than 2 weeks, in small amounts of space, like your stress levels will go up. Just even if nothing is happening, still, like someone is like chewing loudly, someone is like, you know, I don't know, you don't like the way people like shuffle their, you know, feet when they walk or something. There's like little irritating things. And so yeah, remember, space is also a resource, and just think of what I've learned, that respect each other's boundaries, respect each other's space as well. And so one thing, another thing that I wanted to tell you about, another lesson that I've learned, was that leadership matters a lot. So this is maybe, I could talk more about this. I could do a whole presentation just on that part, because this is what I actually study a bit more. So leader has a profound impact on a team. Like the way you lead has different outcomes, not only for tasks that you're doing, but also how people feel and how they perform, and whether your team will be sustainable in the long term. So what I've learned there, and I've learned throughout my research, and also what other folks who study people in small, isolated, confined spaces learned, is that communal leadership becomes very important throughout time. What it means? So it means that a leader who's task-oriented, who's like, we have to do this, I don't care about resources, I don't care how you feel. We have things to accomplish, we have deadlines, we have to go. That sort of leader will be fine for like short period of time, because humans are not robots. And within time, emotional and supportive and communal leadership becomes way more important, because it becomes more important to, because if you want to keep the team going, it is crucial that you actually take care of their mental, their emotional well-being, and whether there are some bad undercurrents running, whether everyone likes each other, whether they can actually work together and really address all the interpersonal issues. And that becomes even more important in places with limited resources. So, be nice. Be nice to your team. Don't focus just on the task. Just also think how feelings are important, and feelings are valid, and feelings are what actually make a team. So, really, to sum up, like my lecture, my speech, my talk today, this is the lessons that I've learned by being and pretending to be on Mars and studying how people would be on Mars one day. That would be useful for all of us here on Earth right now. It's like if you want to be a sustainable leader, if you want to be sustainable project manager, just use what you have, because you probably have things already that you never thought that you have. You just take for granted. Like we all take internet for granted, but it's a resource as well that we have. And be creative how you use things that you already have, so you don't need to acquire new stuff, or because sometimes you cannot do that. And there's something in, let's say, a lot of times you should probably put a team above individual, meaning that not talking about like this blind conformity to like corporate ideals, but just I'm talking about team as a cohesive unit working together. Just so you think, just don't jeopardize teamwork. Just think about your own goals and not just team goals. And clear team roles and responsibilities are very important to avoid very stagnant vertical management and And also it's just easier to divide responsibilities throughout the team. And again, and the kind of my main message that I want to say, and I am saying it for the last months or so since I graduated, is that well-being is as important as performance. And a lot of times you have to work for it. You have to work for teams' well-being. And a lot of times this work is not seen, but it's there, and we should acknowledge, and we should thank people who do that. Maybe we should all do more of it. And I'll finish up by a quote from Scott Kelly from NASA. He said that by going to Mars one day will make things better for us here on Earth. Well, really, let's hope that it will happen. And as I said, analogs are just replicas of what would happen on Mars one day, or a moon. But this is the sandbox that we can play in, that we can learn about the future, and more importantly, learn about us, humans, here now on Earth, while we do that. So future starts here and now, and just make it better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have no doubt that we have a lot of questions, but I have the priority to ask the first one. What was your first meal after being 2 weeks in the desert?
Oh, easy. So there was a tradition. So this place is about 10-15 kilometers away from a desert town with 800 people, booming population, so probably there's more people here than it's actually in that town. And they have a delicious burger joint. So that's kind of a tradition that when folks are done with the simulation, they just go and stop there and just have this delicious, meaty, juicy burger, just like with meat juice just running down your arms. So good.
So much CO2 emissions.
Yeah, they also had vegetarian options, but you can't do soy dripping. It's not the same.
All right, now it's your questions. I see a raised hand.
Hi. Very nice hearing about interesting opportunity. And my question is, you were for a limited time into difficult environment, right? And you learned some habits. You noticed some habits. What happened when you returned? Do those habits remain, or you just switch back to the old days?
So what happened when I returned, I had 3 weeks to finish my dissertation. So my life was very, very different than now. I try to kind of think about some habits that I've formed there. I take longer showers now, if you want to ask about that. And I don't actually conserve as much water as I did there. But other things that I do tend to think about teamwork a bit differently and try to kind of notice other folks, the way they operate is maybe different than I operate, and I try to be less annoyed with people, maybe.
So what do you think? Have you become a better person after those 2 weeks?
Of course I have. I was transformed. No, actually, I don't know. It's, to be honest, 2 weeks will not transform you as a person, just speaking clearly from scientific perspective, but it will give you different insight and different ideas about your life.
But you're no longer shouting on people, right?
Yeah, and I've never shouted. I shout quietly like this.
It was a test. Okay, more questions. If we have some questions online,
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting. You describe a situation where we as individuals and in the team have to work with limitations. It's not like a lot of things you can't do. How long can we do that? Because if you're preparing for Mars, I think, I don't know, but it probably takes 2 years or 4 years to fly there. And when we're there, you're there the rest of your life, I guess. Can we actually really do that? I mean, for 2 weeks, that's one thing. But if you would say, no, do that for 5 years. No burgers, 5 years, but would we be able as human beings to do that?
The answer is yes. It would be hard. And the most important thing is that you actually know your deadline. So what I mean, that if I know that I go for like somewhere for a year or 2 years or 3 years, I know that this is just temporary and I can plan for my life afterwards. But what gets frustrating and what is way harder on a human when there is uncertainty on the other end. So where I'm getting at. So a lot of times people were talking that, oh, pandemic is something similar, what we might experience in the future, space travel and such. Yes and no, because pandemic had this it had this uncertainty. We don't know when it ends. 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, another month, another month, another month. And that uncertainty, that will break you mentally. It's not the time per se, but you don't know when it ends. And when you travel to Mars, to Moon, or you go on an oil tanker, it's also like very similar in that perspective. You know when your shift ends and you come back. So you have this deadline. So that makes mentally easier.
Yeah, but it's hard living on Mars because you cross the line, you're dead. You are on Facebook, you used, cellular data, and you're dead. Everywhere, right? It's not like, it's not like you can buy somewhere around and nobody could help you from Earth. So, but it's absolutely amazing experience. Yeah, I don't want to live on Mars because it lacks my favorite things like oxygen, cookies.
Warmth.
Yeah, warmth. Indeed. Inga, thank you so much. It was absolutely outstanding.
Thank you all for having me.
Keynote of the day. Thank you so much, Inga Popovaite.